What is the worst thing you've seen a little child do? A neighbor's kid would mercilessly throw their two cats into the pool. The cats would fight and scratch, but that didn't stop the boy from flinging the cats repeatedly into the pool and forcing them to swim or drown. His father finally broke him of this behavior by throwing the kid in the pool, clothes and all, every time he caught his son torturing the cats. Oh gosh, the list could go on for me, but here is one incident that really irked me. My sophomore year of college, my cousin asked me if I can take her two daughters, 11 and 6, to the mall, because she was busy and the girls wanted to use their spending money. We go to the mall, I buy them ice cream, and they spend their money. As we're leaving, we pass Claire's and boy oh boy does the youngest want to check it out. Now here is some backstory with these kids. Their mom, my cousin, doesn't punish them worth of shit. I had their son throw a toy train at me once and all I got in response when I told his mom was, "He's 9 and you're 19, just be the bigger person. He's just a kid." That kind of parenting. Anyways, I tell the 6-yo that we can look, but because she already spent her money, we weren't buying anything. As soon as we walk in, she goes up to something she wants and says, "Buy this for me." When I say no, she announces in the store, "Fine then, I'll just take it," and proceeds to walk out the door. I take the U back and tell her that we are going home. Never have I seen a kid throw a tantrum like this in my life. The worst part was every time I tried to carry her or grab her hand she'd scream, "Help me! Help me! I don't know you." The oldest kid records all of it and sends it to her mom, who then simply responds, "Ha, good luck." When we got home, my cousin told me she wouldn't have thrown a tantrum if you just got her the toy. I was livid. My neighbor's kid was burning ants to death with a magnifying glass. After a while he decided that ants were too boring, so he tried to hold down his cat burn at the magnifying glass. Saw a young girl enter a store with her mom and throw a fit when she couldn't get a Barbie doll. Her wailing caused a group of people to show up and things blew up when the girl decided to say that the woman was not her mom. Police were called. I, being a young stalker at the end of my shift, told my manager that the girl came in with the woman and promptly clocked out. Long story short, told to me by the manager the next day, the police sorted the situation and they left the property a few hours later. I was at Boston Market. This kid smacked his mom's butt. She was like, "No." Then he grabbed her skirt and in one move pulled it down to her ankles. She was in shock. The store was packed too. She couldn't get her clothes up fast enough. I admired her for not running out the store though. She got her chicken and left fuming. When I was an English teacher in China, I had a 7-year-old student called Prince. That was not just his chosen English name, which can be anything from Sally or Ben, to Superman or JJ Kangaroo, but also a direct translation of his Chinese name, which gives you all the information you need about this child's idea of his station in life and how he was treated by his parents. This kid yelled at the other kids and me on a daily basis, threw fists if anyone got too close, and once threw a, luckily light plastic chair across the classroom at me. But the worst of all was the time that this kid screamed so much his throat started bleeding. He had to go to hospital and couldn't speak for a few days, which was a blessing, following which I was called into my boss's office and told that his parents were blaming me for it. I told her how absolutely ridiculous that was and made it very clear that when the term rolled over I would not be teaching any class which he was in. Remember that scene in Game of Thrones where Gregor Clegane fights Oberyn Martell and pushes his eyes in to blow his head up? My mother works in a kindergarten where they accept special needs kids too. She told me one day one of the more special kids got another kid on the ground and started pressing his eyes in just like in the show. All the other kids started screaming in terror, not to mention the poor victim, and the attending adult couldn't even get him off. He was gripping his victim so hard. One of the other kids had to run for help and they could finally get him off. Luckily the kid didn't suffer any lasting harm. My neighbor's kid, who was about 10 or 11, used to lure stray dogs up to his porch, then would tie the dog down and stick a firecracker, those little black cats, in the dog's butt and light it on fire. The sheer yelping and screaming from the dog was horrible. Called the police and reported the kid like 1,000 times. All the neighbors hated that boy and jumped on his parents over it. His mom was a meth head, always drugged out, and his dad was a drunk and said, well, at least he isn't a terrorist and blowing up buildings. A family with 2 quite young kids live in my neighborhood. It's a small village with just one small street where barely any cars drive, so the kids often play there. One time, I just happened to look out of the window when they were laughing and playing peacefully outside once again, when suddenly, one of the kids walked a little nearer to the street, where a weird thing was laying, and stepped on it. I could just hear a little stump and a small, faint, cracking sound. As the kid lifted their foot, there was a crushed baby bird laying there. I guess it had fallen out of some tree near the road, and the kid just looked at it. There was blood and just that poor little, now crushed baby bird laying on the road. I'm sure it was on purpose, though. The bird was definitely already dead before. I have 2 aunts on mom's side. Aunt A lost her home in a flood, and they moved into Aunt B's home for about 3 months. Aunt A's family had a teacup poodle. Aunt B's son, Alex, 10 years old, spent most of that 3-month period trying to kill their dog with Rube Goldberg machines. At first it was a "that was weird" situation, which quickly became, "this child is psychotic." He started off with making an elaborate bottle rocket cannon, then threw the dog into the pool and threw cinder blocks at it, tried repeatedly to cram it into cardboard boxes, throwing tools and hardware at it from the 2nd-story balcony. It was scary. I think a few months after Aunt A's family moved out, the kid hit his little brother in the head with a shovel and split his scalp open. They started therapy after that one. A couple of years ago, I witnessed my then 6-year-old and 8-year-old cousins fighting and shouting at each other in the kitchen, like siblings are wont to do. Some sort of stupid argument about how they refused to share food and neither one wanted to back down. Big sister stormed off into the living room. I thought the fight was over, so I decided to leave the kitchen too. As I was leaving, out of the corner of my eye, I saw my younger cousin wielding a large knife, and he ran towards his sister intending to stab her with it. Now, how the hell do you stop a furious 6-year-old boy with a knife? Thankfully I managed to grab the knife from him as fast as I could. It was dangerous for me to simply grab it out of his hand, could have accidentally stabbed myself too, but when you're the only adult around, you'd probably do the same thing to stop 2 kids from hurting each other. Note: yes, we stored the knives on a much higher shelf after that incident. We haven't had to worry about young kids running around in the family home for decades, because almost everyone in our batch of cousins were closer in age to each other and grew up together, until the day I found out my 6-year-old cousin was able to climb his way to obtaining a knife. That was quite eye-opening. Was out camping on a lake with numerous families with kids. This one couple had 2 daughters, can't remember if they were twins or just really close in age. All of us kids found a huge spawning area for frogs, little frogs and tadpoles everywhere. It was really cool. Well, these 2 little psychopaths start picking up the little guys, power flicking them on the back of the head, and watching them seizure and lose consciousness and then slowly regain it, only for them to do it again until they died from little traumatic froggy brain injuries. They also stomped on a bunch of them, and scooped up handfuls of tadpoles and chucked them into the forest. We were horrified and told their parents, who just laughed and went back to drinking by the campfire. I really hope now that they are adults they look back on that day and fucking hate themselves. One of the cruelest things I have ever witnessed someone do to an animal. I was a K-3 teacher. One of my kids was 6 years old. He had learned to manipulate one poor girl into doing his dirty work. He convinced her to punch another girl in the back. The girl broke down and told me how A had told her to do it and other things. I confronted A about it. He shrugged it off like it was funny. He felt no remorse and got angry at L for telling me. Keep in mind, L had a bad reputation by the time I arrived. I went to the administration and we found out that all the drama from the year had been orchestrated by this boy. At 6 years old, he knew how to manipulate others into doing his dirty work, all because he thought it was entertaining. This isn't as bad as some of the other ones, but it was an awful night. When I was 16, I worked at Subway with a lady who had 2 little kids, around age 2 and 4. She asked me to come over and babysit on Saturday night so she could go out to dinner with her husband. When it was time to make them dinner, I left them on the couch in the living room in front of the TV while I heated up the food. Their mom left. I heard giggles and happy squeals from the living room. Awesome, happy kids. I came out to the 2-year-old with her diaper off, smearing her crap along the wall from one end to the other. Her older sister was cheering her on. I stuck the 4-year-old at the kitchen table with her dinner and took the 2-year-old to the bathroom down the hall to hose off the poop. I hear what I can only describe as evil cackling coming from the living room. I grab the baby and run out to the 4-year-old with a lighter trying to set things on fire. Luckily, the only thing she had success with was a piece of paper that I stomped out. I never babysat again. However, I did learn the fun fact that day that you could easily remove the child safety tab on the lighter by simply ripping it off. Why you would do that when you have 2 little kids is beyond me, though. I guess so you can light up your cigarette 2 seconds faster. Great parenting right there. During the first week of my current job, my boss brought his kid, 6yo, to the office. She walked into my office and said hi very sweetly, making me think she was a normal, nice kid. She motioned that she had a secret to tell me, so I bent over. She cupped both hands around my ear, and screamed as loud as she possibly could. I shouted in pain and stood up, and she kicked me in the nuts, punched my stomach, then ran away giggling. That's when I learned she can never be trusted. I've caught her going through my desk, stealing stuff. I have several office plants and I just know she's going to destroy them someday. She likes to glare at me through my office window like Jack in The Shining, stabbing the glass with a pencil or scissors until I tell her to go away. Once she ate all 15 cookies I brought in for a coworker's birthday, then came to me and asked me to make more for her. When she's in the office, I lock my door and pretend she's not there until she goes away. My cousin would find crayfish in the creek and throw them in fans of running AC condensing units for fun. Forced me and his little sister to skip school. Midwinter in Georgia. He then soaked a cat in cold water and threw it outside in the freezing weather. We found it frozen solid later that day and he cheered. We got caught for skipping elementary school. Once he took a big shit while we were all eating dinner. He brought it out to the table then proceeded to squeeze it between his fingers in front of everyone. All of this was before he was in middle school. Not sure how little of a child you mean.